Hey everybody, I'm joined by Karthik Sunil as a junior graphic designer, motion design skill sets. Over the last year, Karthik has embraced his first year of full-time graphic design roles after graduating from uni. Though I do think it's been a little over a year. That's correct, Karthik, right?
Yes, that is right.
Awesome. One of the things I'm really excited about talking with Karthik is he brings a unique perspective to the table. Oftentimes we hear from the hiring side what needs to be done to get hired, but very few times do we hear from the actual applicant side of what they felt worked for them, their journey, and things like that. So I'm really excited to talk to you, Karthik. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you very much, Grant. I appreciate you reaching out to me for this. I'm looking forward to this as well.
Awesome. So let's just jump right into it, man. Tell me about uni. How was uni? What were things that you learned there and so forth?
Yeah. So I'm based up in Scotland. So I went to college for 2 years to do graphic design. Then I also went to university for 3 years. I graduated last year and I got to do a range of projects there, from branding to motion graphics, video editing, bit of UI UX. So it really opened doors to me to the range of creative work out there to do. And it was a great time for me to experiment with my skill set as well, to find out what's really working for me, what's my niche, and what doesn't really work for me, I suppose. So yeah, I think in that way, it was a great way to open doors to the various creative mediums out there, I suppose.
Where did you go, by the way?
So I am based up in Aberdeen. It's a small city in the north of Scotland. So when you look at UK on a map, you see London at the south, Aberdeen's at the very top end.
What is something that you felt that the school really prepped you for? And what are some things that you really found that once you got out and you're beginning some applications out, hopefully before even graduating, that you found were a bit challenging and things that you had to learn?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think university was great in opening you doors to experimenting with your craft and figuring out what is it you're wanting to do, because you get all this time and energy to put into all these years of work. So in that kind of sense, it was great for that. Recently, a couple of months ago, I got to go back to my university to deliver a talk to talk about, what it's like being in the industry and what are things I've, kind of shocking moments that I didn't really figure out while I was in university. And there's so many parts to that. And with the hiring process, by my final year, I kind of got to better understand that this is how the industry works, this is how it operates, but also what kind of soft skills are important to have, what kind of technical skills are out there. But I think really when you get into the field of working, you learn as you go. And, one of the things I've said in my talk was that as soon as I started, working, I realized there's just so much you learn on the spot every week. And it's not as soon as you finish university, you have all this knowledge with you, you're ready, you're prepared to go into the work field. But in reality, there's just so much, you need to start from the very beginning as soon as you start working. So yeah, I think it's quite different. And then with the hiring process as well, it can be challenging. I spent over summer applying to tons of jobs, and right now the market is very competitive, I would say. But it's also, you just got to keep applying and trying to find out what works for you. Yeah.
When you're sending out those applications, and you mentioned, it's a bit rough right now in the market. You're sending out those applications. What is something that you felt really helped you stand out above others?
I'm not too sure for myself, but for me, maybe with my skill set, I do a lot of motion graphics. So I got into motion graphics when I was a bit younger for university. And I thought, what, this is something that's in the past few years have become much more common in the design field, I suppose. So with my portfolio, when I was sending out work, I would always start off with my show reel at the start, because when hiring managers look at your portfolios, they don't spend more than a few minutes sometimes looking at it, because they go through hundreds of applications. So for me, I really wanted to, get people's attention from the very beginning. And for me, that was with a show reel, just compiling some of my design print works, but also my branding, and then also my logo animations, video editing, all into a 1 minute segment. And I think show reels are great for that. Yeah, definitely. So I suppose that really helped, but also like I'm looking around seeing what other people are doing and seeing what's working and what are hiring managers looking for. You know, it's all about making it accessible, easy to navigate, but also, you know, looking at work that aligns with what they're looking for, what kind of projects they're doing. Like if you're applying to a certain studio or agency, try to figure out what kind of styles are they looking for, what kind of projects do they showcase, and try to emulate that for your portfolio, I suppose.
And I especially understand that from the essentially not having enough time to review every portfolio. I think on my end, you know, we might get, just because of the state of the market right now, we might get like 600 applicants. Really, only about 200 of those applicants are actually be qualified for the position to begin with.
Yeah.
And, you know, reality is either I can spend next to no time looking at 200 and not doing a full review of people's portfolios, or I can take like 50 that I feel like, hey, you know, but I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on these 50 to really kind of get a sense of those individuals. Personally, I found that to be very helpful. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see, you know, what people do to stand out, what people sometimes just kind of neglect to do, that really fundamental things that would help them stand out, things like that. When you're doing your interviews, what was something kind of like you learned through the interviewing process of like, you know, maybe a question that tends to pop up you weren't expecting, things like that?
Oh, that's a good question. Like for the interview process, you also get like a range of questions as well. Like, you know, talk to me about your work, or sometimes they go through your portfolio itself and you get to go through, you know, these are all the projects I work on and this is how I do. They want to understand your thought process behind things. But what I find interesting is they also want to see how you tackle certain challenges. Like, for instance, how do you deal with a difficult client, to say like, oh, this is a challenging client who doesn't really understand what we're doing. How would you present your work to them that, you know, kind of understands what their perspective as well, but also taking into consideration that something's not working. So you want to, you know, create something that works for both the client, but for your perspective. But I had like a lot of range of questions. I think one of the questions I had for my first job interview, it was like, you know, list a design work that you think is awful, that, you know, you don't quite stand out. And I couldn't figure out something because I'm always focused on thinking of, oh, these are projects I like, these are projects I love from studios, but I never consider what are projects out there that doesn't really hit the mark, I suppose. There's been a lot of questions you get in interviews, but majority of them are just like general ones that you'd expect from any other fields, really. Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about just a bit ago that I think was really important was going in on the idea of not just presenting work to say, hey, you did work, but how you worked with the client to achieve a certain result. Yep. I actually think that's something that personally, from my point of view, not that many people do. It's not really solution oriented designing. Sometimes it's just designing, and I think that tends to hurt people's portfolios to an extent. So that's really actually bring that up. Are you familiar with like the STAR method?
That does sound familiar, but not fully.
All right. No, it's what you were doing. It's you had like your situation, your task, your action, and your result.
Yes.
And, yeah. So I think that was really important to have. So that's a good tip. Karthik tips 101. Let's go.
101 tips. End of the day, we're problem solvers as designers, I feel. You know, we're trying to figure out the client's needs and wants, but also mind reading at some points as well, I suppose. And
I love that.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, like going into the industry, you learn so much as you go. Every week I'm learning new things about certain tools I use, whether it's Adobe apps, but also fundamental things about designs with layouts, type, and hierarchy. And there's so many bits, you know, you just learn as you go. And for me, it was just being on the job and like experiencing like that was really helpful.
When you're applying, were you ultimately looking to get hired by an agency? Were you looking to kind of go in-house or like more of a larger company? What was the goal?
So like previously, like with my recent job beforehand, I was like, you know, I've worked in in-house positions for internships, but also worked in agency positions as well for like placements and internships as well. And I've seen both sides. And I feel like for me, being on the agency side, it's a bit more fast-paced, but you get to work with a range of clients out there. And I suppose in a way you learn more through that kind of mindset. And for me, I was, growing a bit more faster by being on an agency side. So I love the aspect of like working with a range of different clients, from different sectors. And that was great in that kind of sense. Yeah.
And so, now that you're, correct me wrong, but Mission 10 is an agency, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now that you're with an agency, how has your workflow been? Like, do you work kind of by yourself? Do you work in a team? Is that kind of what you're expecting?
Yeah. So I work with like a team of marketers mainly, but there's also a senior designer above me. And we work in a small team, but we work with a range of different clients in different sectors. And I suppose the process is very organized. Like, typically we go to the internal team and they review the work, and then we go to the clients afterwards and they review the work after that. So it's a very organized structure, and it's always good having like a mentor above you who's like a bit more experienced in the field, and you can learn from them, I suppose, much quicker.
When you have that mentor at an agency, do you like meet with them weekly? Do you meet with them monthly? Is it more of like you just kind of go to them as you need them? What's kind of the setup, but what's also kind of your preference?
Also almost daily, to be honest. Like, it's always like daily reviews on works, but also like when I'm stuck on something or something I don't understand, it's good to get another designer's perspective on why this isn't working, what we can do to improve it, I suppose. So like in that kind of sense, it's always helpful having like a mentor beside you to kind of understand, figure out, like almost help with your problem solving when you're creating work for a client. I've had many occasions where I'm just like, I create like a piece of design, or it could be animation, even like a social post, and I'm like, this isn't really clicking, but I don't know why, and it's good to have someone there who can kind of break it down, and also you can take notes from and figure out, okay, this is what I can do to improve and take it further.
I love that you said daily, because from my perspective, I think it can be easy at times for anyone who is fresh in agency, whether it be a junior or just someone moving agencies, to sometimes get intimidated by reaching out, and the idea of like they just kind of don't want to seem like they're bothering.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and from like the very start, I kind of learned that there is no stupid questions. And like, when you're working with a mentor, it's always about, even if there's things that like sometimes it's like you could spend ages Googling it and, trying to figure out why isn't this working, but having someone right there, quick to chat and like help out is so important, especially when you're starting out as a junior position. Yeah.
Have you done client presentations yet?
Not as much. I've been in client presentations, but that's a side that I'm quite keen to, get into. I'd imagine yourself, you've been more experienced with client presentations then.
Yeah, they're interesting. I enjoy it. I really, I if I was able to look back at it the first time I did it, I would say I was very nervous and stuff. I think that's normal. I think now I'm way more laid back, and I'm just way more conversational and casual with everything. Sometimes that doesn't mesh with the client, which is okay. Part of it's always learning how to pivot to the client's language, but as well, just always making sure to be authentic as well. And so that's what I have found personally to be really helpful.
Understanding their needs and wants, and delivering, matching their energy as well.
Exactly, yeah. And I feel like, if you're not authentic with them, then at the same time, I just feel like you kind of end up in the loop of like selling them something they may not even need, because since you're not being authentic, you're not really understanding what they're doing. You're not trying to understand, and you're kind of going if just ulterior motives at times.
Yeah.
Never the idea.
Absolutely, yeah.
What are some tips and tricks that you learned for surviving in the agency world?
Tips and tricks I've learned is like, one thing I always do is just keep like a notepad of like technical tricks and tips, I suppose. And like, I use a lot of like InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, After Effects, the main Adobe tools. So like, whenever like I came across like a new feature or something that I haven't really used before, I always just keep a note. So it's just a library I just go through. That's really helpful to have. And then also like, especially when you're like in an agency setting, time management is so important. Time is money when you're working in this kind of field. So just being efficient with your workflow, and also learning shortcuts and figuring out, what's probably a quicker way to do this that's a bit more efficient, I suppose. And like, I do a lot of After Effects work as well with like motion graphics and creating social posts. So with that, it's like being efficient about it. Like there may be a better way to go about producing this effect that takes less amount of time, but also, is much more efficient. Yeah.
I love that you talk about efficiency, because I think that's dead on. I think it is efficient. You're given a budget, you're like, cool, you obviously want to maximize how much you're able to earn, or the agency is able to earn through the budget. So you're being very efficient and everything. I think it also hits on a really key point, which is it's like you learn the software, but the software at the end of the day really isn't the main thing you need to learn. It's more the critical thinking and troubleshooting that comes after you've learned the software, and just kind of understanding that it's kind of like every client in a way is a puzzle.
You're just putting pieces together in the puzzle.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. Yeah,
it feels like. Are you familiar with like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme where it's like Charlie's got like the cork board in the back and he's got like the red strings he's connecting all the dots. Yeah. Like, it feels like that.
All mind reading. Yeah.
It feels like that. It's a lot of fun too. I
suppose it can be like, problem solving can be so fun as well. Like, it's rewarding at the end of the day to create something like from the ground up. Imagine for instance, like a brand identity that you started off with and seeing it grow, and then seeing the final outcome in person, like up around you. It's so rewarding, and like nothing really beats that feeling for me. Like seeing something that you starting from the initial concepts and seeing it grow, blossom into something, all these like different elements. It's amazing.
It is. It really is. So now that you brought that up, I have to ask you, what is your favorite project you've worked on?
Oh my God. Yeah, I came prepared. I watched your like interview with Ash, so I was like, that's going to be a question that pops up. For me, like it would be like my final uni projects I worked on. So for my final year, we get to spend a whole year working on a specific projects or multiple projects. And for me, I created this thing called Cosmic Explorers. So ever since I was a child, I was always fascinated by space, and I always loved the idea of creating like an app that was aimed towards children to make space a bit more accessible, but fun as well to learn. And with this project, I got to do a bit of everything, brand books, a bit of motion graphics, advertisements, merchandise. And then I also got to use Figma for the first time, which was a great tool. And I got to produce some UI UX designs for that. And then also put together a proper advertisements, a proper, video project. It was like, in a way, it was like spending a year on this one project, but I got to bring so many different pieces together and show it to the world. And that was really cool. And at the end of it, I got to display it in an exhibition for our university, and getting to see the public interact with it, but also my target market, which I was aiming towards kids. That was just so rewarding, I think. So yeah, that was a great project.
One of the things I really liked about that project were the characters you created essentially through the UI. I really felt like it really brought a lot of your personal style out.
A lot of my personal style is like, fun character illustrations, but also vibrant colors and rounded shapes. So like over the years, I did illustration in spare time as well, mostly through Adobe Illustrator, and a lot of those kind of characters and those kind of like elements really came together in this. And I thought, this will be cool to animate this as well, and also bring together in an app with these vibrant colors, bold typography, and all that. So seeing like the final outcome, it was like definitely rewarding, and to see other people experiencing that, I feel like that's like the best feeling of a designer, like getting to see it in public and seeing other people interact with it or observe it. It's so fun.
It was great seeing it. I remember seeing it when you first posted it in the Motion Collabs group. And then, obviously I got to see it again when I went to go check out your website to grab links and stuff. So
speaking of Motion Collabs, that's where I first met you and like, a couple of the other guys. And like, that's like another big thing that I love doing is collaborations, and Motion Collabs is so amazing because you get to see people of so many different levels from the creative spectrum and come together and work on these like huge collaborations. And I always love doing collab projects. So to see like works like from you and all these other guys who's worked on it come together, it's so fun. Yeah.
I don't know. I preach about it every single time I get a chance to like my team, because I do feel like not specifically unique to Motion Collabs, but just the idea overall, like getting out there to see what other people are doing and learning. Because specifically motion clouds for me, like I'll be like, okay, cool, I'm going to join in on a project that they're doing, and I'll just see someone else who I've kind of seen them like a little message every now and then finally I'll see what they turn in, and I'm just like, dang, like this person was like incredibly skilled. Even just from seeing what they did, I've learned a lot about what I could put into my work.
Yeah, I think like Ash briefly mentioned in his interview, or I might be wrong, it was something about experimenting. It was like the perfect time to like experiment when you're working with these like motion collab projects. Like when you're in like a work setting, you can be very restricted. So when you go to do these like fun experimental collabs, you really got to expand your skill set and try things that you don't normally do. And for me, it was really great because I got to see like creatives of like different disciplines come together and see how they tackle a brief in a different perspective in a way. And also like, things I can do to improve on my work to create something that's, bit more out there, a bit more experimental, a bit more open. Yeah.
Karthik, I got a question for you, and that is, right now you're a junior graphic designer, but where's the end goal? Where do you want to end up?
Ooh, that's a hard question. Like that's actually a big interview question that comes up as well. So, for me right now, I'm just like keeping my eyes open. I think like the design industry is evolving so much, and like I did a bit of freelancing before, but I've also done the agency side. So I think down the line, I definitely still want to be in a creative focus role somewhere down the line, but don't know where that is for now. So I think it's important to keep your eyes open and seeing what's happening around. So yeah, there's my big answer.
Hey, I love it, man. You're staying nimble.
Yeah, 100%. Just keeping your eyes out and seeing what's out there is so important.
All right, everybody. That was Karthik Sunil, who is a fantastic junior graphic designer with motion design skill sets. He currently works at an agency called Mission 10. And I'm really excited to see how he grows and where he goes next. As well, if you really gained a lot of insight from him from the opposite side of the hiring table when it comes to what are things to do right, what are things to do wrong, things like that through hiring processes and so forth. So Karthik, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for this, Grant. I appreciate you reaching out to me for this interview. It's so much fun, and keep up the stuff with all these interviews with fellow motion designers out there.